Hi and hello watch fans, and welcome to another edition of The Real Time Show with me, your friendly neighborhood watchmaker Rob Nuts, and my co-host Alan Ben Joseph, calling in all the way from Amsterdam. Today we are going to pick up where we left off a couple of weeks back and finish off our Geneva Watch Days roundup. Alan, are you looking forward to this one?
Very much so. I always love discussing the fun we had, so it's almost like I'm reliving it. So let's get going.
Okay, right. Where we stopped last time was on a high note after our visit to Charles Zuber, a brand that we hope to work with closely in the future. Next up came our visit to Lederer, a modern legend, a living legend, as it were. A man who is as big in stature as his brand is in name, and the watches we saw were themselves rather impactful. What did you make of Lederer's movement architecture specifically, Alan?
I was actually rather quiet for some time, which is rare, I have to admit, and I guess you can concur with that because I am a chatterbox. It was the first time that I've met the power couple Lederer, and lovely Mrs. Lederer took the time to sit down with us. We also met Bernard Lederer, and I had to sit down and absorb the watch because it was also the first time that I actually held the watches. And at first, it struck me how big the watches were, but then how slim they were. And I loved the fact how you had two openings in the dial. You could see a number 8 in there, so eternity symbol, it's however you perceive it. And then when you flip the watch around, it's mesmerizing. And it took me some time because our dear listeners might know that I love resonance pieces, but this actually isn't a resonance caliber. Rob, can you please explain what Lederer did and why that watch is so special?
Well, it's a very unusual caliber that does look like a resonance mechanism when you glance at it. But the central impulse chronometer is effectively a remontoire, and it uses two separate trains operating two separate seconds hands, which curiously move in different directions, which creates a very odd optical illusion. But ultimately, the idea is to equalize out the force to the escapements and to establish better timekeeping. So looks similar to a resonance mechanism, not quite the same in terms of architecture, but certainly one for the purists. And it's a massive caliber, in fairness. Now, as I alluded to earlier, Bernard himself is quite a large guy, and legend has it, when he first designed this watch, he just kind of made it for himself because, as many watchmakers are, focused on their craft and less on the commercialization thereof. He didn't think that people under 2 meters would struggle to wear the caliber. And when it came to redesigning the case to make it actually wearable by normal humans, they had to be quite clever with their use of sapphire to reduce the visual impact of the watch. And what I loved about it was not just the high double-domed sapphire on the front, but also this incredible shaped sapphire crystal on the back, which looks like it would be impossible to achieve any kind of water resistance with, but it gives such a beautiful 3D presentation of the movement. I must commend it. And we spoke at length, actually, the night before we met later with Sylvain Berneron, our good friend, of course, and he was telling us the tricks and the clever angles that were used in that case design to make it seem more palatable on the wrist, shall we say. And he knows very well exactly what was done in that design process because he was for a while involved in it. So great to hear that, great to see that in real life, and really fascinating to appreciate the watch on the wrist. Did it come off in your mind as a watch that you would like to own, or was it one that you more respected from afar?
Good question, because I'm using this as a segue to bridge the previous episode. We didn't really air them chronologically because you and I are basically swamped and we create too much content. For those that might not remember or haven't heard the previous episode, part 1 of this show, Chapek blew me away this year with the Place Vendôme Complicité. And if you've paid attention, that caliber was created together with Lederer. And that really was one of my favorites of Geneva Watch Days 2023. And it might be even my second favorite Chapek ever. I mean, how can I not put the Antarctique on number one? I'm still on the waiting list myself. And I went for the basic one, closed dial. But how amazing is the Révélation and so many others. But the Place Vendôme Complicité is really breathtaking. And after visiting Lederer as well, Rob, I have to go for the Chapek one. So basically, you kill two birds with one stone. But would I want to own one? No. And that's simply because the VII kicks in, your famous visual impact index. And it reminds me a bit of the wonderful but huge IWC Portofinos with the hand-wound pocket calibers, where it's simply too thick. And I don't mean this disrespectfully, but we call them pancakes in the hallways of the watch collecting community. And the funny thing is, IWC, their first ever gold watch with a moon phase, was nicknamed in German Der Spiegelei, the
fried egg.
Fried egg. So sunny side up. So and that gave me a bit of eye. But again, guys, I definitely don't want to be disrespectful because the caliber is breathtaking. And the answer lies in what you said. It's maybe for big guys or gals. So moving on. After Lederer, we went to our friends at the Frederic Constant group, meeting both Frederic Constant and Alpina at once on the balcony. It became one grand reunion with a lot of Dutchies. So I felt at home. You always love the Dutch, so you felt at home. We met up with Niels Eggeding. We met up with Olivier. He's the general manager of Alpina. We even had the ex-CEO of Alpina come in, Guido Benedini, who runs Watch Angels today, but obviously our close friends as well still. We had the national brand manager. We saw the novelties. They're celebrating the 35th anniversary at Frederic Constant as a brand. Rather young, but if you think about it, this year they launched the 31st caliber. And this show, they presented a big date moon-phased, in-house developed, in-house built caliber. I loved it. What did you think, Rob?
I think the story of Frederic Constant is absolutely fascinating. To have done what the brand has done and to have become such an immovable behemoth in the industry landscape in that amount of time is just quite stunning. And 31 calibers, did you say, in 35 years? I mean, that beggars belief. I always struggle in a way to get a handle on what FC is. I love a lot of what the brand does in vastly different price points, and it always fascinates me how it's able to be so many things at once. Because when I think about it, like my gut instinct is to say, okay, Frederic Constant, it's accessible luxury. It sits well alongside like a brand like Nomos, for example. It was always in the cases next to Nomos whenever I'd go around, especially in the States, and I'd go around and check all the Nomos displays, and right next to the brand, almost without fail, was Frederic Constant, because the retailers obviously identify a similarity between the customers or potential customers that come in looking for a nice watch at a reasonable price. But in addition to all of that great stuff down there in the entry-level bracket, there's incredible horology going on. There's precious metals in cases. There's technology that we just, well, like the monolithic oscillator, it's incredible to see that in such an affordable timepiece. And I don't have any bad thing to say about Frederic Constant. I'm not saying that because I can't get a handle on exactly what the brand is that's a drawback to it. I think it's playing its role as this flexible, floating experimenter, young enough to do whatever it wants, and established enough now to have the horological chops to back it up. I think it's just fascinating. Alpina instinctively is a brand that I gravitate towards more, oddly enough. I love the old logo. This is a brand that's been around for 140 years or so and has a great heritage, has some really curious models in its past, some total oddballs. And the headline grabber for me this time around with Alpina was the Alpina Heritage Carré Mechanical, which is the smaller and much more expensive version of the automatic version you can buy for 1,295 British pounds. I'm in Britain at the moment, so I've got British pounds in front of me. I'm sorry, I'm all over the place. And the mechanical one, rectangular, smaller, uses new old stock movement. That's 4,493, but that's an absolute worldie, and I love that. And I want your opinion on Frederic Constant as well, of course, and also on Alpina, but just a slight tangential segue. We don't have enough rectangular watches in the market today, and this Alpina, especially the mechanical one with the beautiful movement, is something quite special. But what's just as special, and recently found its way to your wrist, is the Fears archival model that Nicholas Bowman-Scargill, friend of the show, was nice enough to bring with him to the dinner we shared with Fears and Collective and Blake from Worn and Wound, and you went ahead and bought it. So tell us a little bit about that rectangular model, and then walk us back through Alpina and your thoughts on Frederic Constant in that order, if you don't mind.
So I kept on saying all year round and the last year that this show is bad for me and my wallet. Instead of getting saturated with watches because of talking of it, it gets it out of my system. It fuels my passion even more, and therefore my spending habit. I always loved Fears from afar. After our interview with Nicholas, I fell in love with him and the brand even more. The archival 1930, which is a tribute to and watch from their archives, really spoke to me. But I love rectangular watches from a distance. I've never pulled the trigger on a reverso, and I've actually never owned or worn a rectangular watch, but that one really spoke to me. So Nicholas was so kind to invite us to a intimate dinner with his friends in Geneva Watch Days, which was actually the evening of the day that we're discussing right now. And I asked him, could you please bring a 1930s? I would love to see it in the flesh. So he did so. I fell in love head over heels with the watch and begged him if I could have one because it's a limited edition watch. And I know they're sold out or almost sold out. So apparently they have a few left of people that snoozed on the pieces. So there and then I pulled the trigger and ordered one. It arrived literally a day before we're recording this. I have it on my wrist right now. And to my big surprise, I'm liking it. I'm digging it. Lovely watch, and I can pull off rectangular. So using this as a segue back to Alpina, I'm with you 100%. Alpina celebrated the 140th anniversary earlier this year with an amazing sterling silver case, and they found 140 new old stock Alpina calibers, which are form-shaped calibers, rectangular. They sold out, so I snoozed on that one. But luckily, as you said, Rob, they, at Geneva Watch Days, reintroduced a, let's call it a more accessible civilian piece in stainless steel with a automatic caliber. So it's round, but at a price point of 1,450 euros. I am in Amsterdam, so I talk in euros, including VAT. So kudos to Alpina. And where people call Frederic Constant accessible luxury, they're slowly moving more into the realms of horlogerie because they are manufacturer, and they by now made a tourbillon as well and a perpetual calendar. Alpina is filling that gap like Longines fills Omega's gap by moving upmarket. Alpina always had quartz watches, and they still do. And my second favorite launch this year by Alpina is actually their World Timer, Star Timer, quartz watch, around 1,000 euros. It's a tool watch. It shows a 24 hours disc, but also cities, 24 cities around the world, which I think is uber cool. And Rob and I definitely not watch snobs, and we do not raise our nose for quartz watches. On that topic, quick intermezzo, Rob. What did you think of the Second launch with Full and Mary? Did you see it?
Yeah, I saw it and I really liked it. And he's busy at the moment, isn't he, Romaric? I got an email from, I'm not sure I can mention it because I've had a pretty bad couple of weeks of embargo busting. So apologies for that to brands whose novelties I let slip earlier than I should have done. But I'm just excited and passionate about those things, and I'm sure ultimately it does no harm. But there's another Second collaboration coming with a very micro brand actually in the next few weeks. So keep your eyes peeled for extreme affordability. Talking about the Furlan Mary one specifically, this is the Hertz Beat model, and it's a lovely, how can we call it, a Cyclops chronograph, I suppose, with a small subdial on with a subdial at 9 o'clock in blue, and then a typically pixelated Second style heart, which will rotate lovingly on the dial. I mean, it's a lovely looking watch. It's a great combination of colors. The blue subdial surprised me. I would maybe have preferred that to be in an old gold that matches the print on the dial. I think that would have created a bit more visual harmony. But I tell you what, it's a fun piece, and it's 720 francs, which is not a lot of money for that kind of thing, right?
Indeed, and I loved his teaser where he posted a quartz stone cut in the shape of a heart. And I love the fact that both the founders of Furlan Mary are not snooty, and Romaric Andre, whose alias is Second, is definitely not. So on that topic, Rob and I love quartz watches as well. So Alpina and Frédéric Constant, congratulations. You've hit the watch world and fairs hard this year because they were first time ever at Watches and Wonders, and they rocked Geneva Watch Days as well. From there, we had maybe the most fun meeting for me at Geneva Watch Days. We went to Réservoir. Rob, do you want to kick it away?
Yeah, so we sat down with Francois Moreau, the CEO of Reservoir, and it was a huge surprise to us how quickly we connected and how much we enjoyed each other's company. We sat there for 2 hours, actually. It was kind of our last meeting of the day. We did actually have to push another planned meeting that we picked up the following day, and we'll get to that later. But it was an absolute joy to sit down with Francois and just talk. And, you know, we were in breathless conversation for those 120 minutes and sharing watches, looking at the novelties on the horizon and talking about ways that we could work together. I think we're very much likely to see TRTS Reservoir team up in the imminent future. But what was your takeaway from that meeting, Elon? I mean, is it the first time you've met him? And is it the first time you've really got up close and personal with the watches?
So definitely first time meeting Francois, and I salute you, sir. Real entrepreneur, real passion, no BS. That's how the watch industry was. And that's how the watch industry should become for 80% plus. Again, so I'm very happy you've decided to leave banking behind and revive fun in the watchmaking industry. I've held several Reservoir pieces, and for those that don't know the brand, their niche, their DNA is a lot of retrograde. And so jumping hours, a hand that doesn't make full 360 degrees circular movements, but jumps back, which is inspired by speedometers and gauges and meters. And they infuse that with a lot of fun, pop art, cartoons. So I've always admired them from afar, but never got the gist of it. And I couldn't explain the price point. And that shows how important it is to sit down, especially face to face, to hear a story, because everything in life is people's business. I mean, any business is people's business. And it's all about storytelling, isn't it? So it was amazing to hear his philosophy, why he started the brand, why he makes the watches that he makes. And most importantly, I was blown away about the quality, the philosophy of making. And actually, what I've never known, he has a patent on the retrograde system of the minutes hands that he created maybe I'm not using the right term, but correct me if I'm wrong, Rob, it's an anti-slip system. What does it mean? If you think about it, if a minute hand starts at 0, let's say around the 7 o'clock or 8 o'clock positions, goes clockwise to 60 minutes, which is positioned at, let's say, 4 o'clock, it will jump back to 0 where the 8 hours are positioned normally. Now, if you think about it, if you pull out the crown, you can set the time, right? But technically, these retrograde movements and or jumping hours, you shouldn't turn them back in time because you could damage the discs. So Reservoir came up with an idea and a patent and a technology where when you turn the hands back in time, it basically dislodges and you can keep on spinning so it slips, let's say, so you don't damage the movement. So that really, really impressed me and was the first time I heard about it. So I'm super excited about both the brand, the watches, and maybe most importantly, the people behind it, because it wasn't just Francois. His whole team was very passionate, laid back, and they were all about having fun and sharing their passion.
Yeah, they came off really, really well, and it was very interesting to get to know about this slipping clutch, I suppose I would term it, in the mechanism which allows you to safely set the time and even turn it backwards if you need to. Okay, you'll hear a lot more from Reservoir in the future. Francois is going to come on the show anyway, and like I say, we're likely going to be working with them, so watch this space. That's going to be exciting. Where shall we go next? How about you tell us about your visit to Armin Strom? I wasn't there because I was at the Moser press conference, so go ahead.
Yeah, so as we said, we had too many meetings, too little time, so Rob and I often split up. And by the way, Rob, I'm saying this on air because I haven't spoken to you for quite some time. Kudos on the interview you've done with Nicholas from ID Geneva, because you went alone to that meeting, and I've listened to it just on air. Well done. I love ID Geneva because you ended the interview that we want them back on the show because I would love to speak to them. I know these chaps well, but super interesting story. So Armin Strom is another brand that I have been admiring a very long time. And they came on my radar due to the fact that they made resonance pieces. So after FP Jaune, Armin Strom came on my radar. And I love the fact that they have this northern Swiss style of design. Less is more, call it a IWC-esque clean design code. Although they're from Bienne, so that's interesting. So they're from the south of Switzerland or mid, but very clean, very Germanic design, all about technology. And everything they do is new. Met up with them. They rented a boat on the lake. So that was interesting. It was a nice sunny day. So we sat on the roof of that. I don't even know what kind of boat it was, but it was a 2-floored thing. It was a bit wobbly. So that was an interesting experience because looking at a resonance piece vibrating at a high speed and then on a wobbly boat created a very 3D experience. But I shot some actually cool pictures with the jet on the background. So you can check that on our LinkedIn page or on my Instagram. They are pushing the envelope, both on technology. Their DNA is evolving. Something that I salute very much is they always had a little, how should I call it? A tab coming out of the bezel on the case at the 6 o'clock position, which I never understood what it was. I thought it was something that you can flip open, but apparently it was meant to personalize watches and it was meant to engrave something for the buyer of the watch on it. That little lip is being smaller and smaller, made smaller by Armin Strom with the aim to diminish that. So I'm very happy about that. They will come back on the show. So I say let's save that for a full interview with Armin Strom.
That sounds like a good idea. Yeah, I'd love to talk to them in person. And sorry I couldn't make it to the wobbly boat, but it does sound a little bit stomach churning. Is that the way to phrase it? You looked a bit peaky when you got off. Was it?
Yeah, it was. If I may give a recommendation, I would make the next exhibition at Geneva, which is back on the shores. All the hotels we attended were lovely. So that's a little recommendation from my side. And while I have the mic, Rob, before we listen to you being at the spectacular launch for the Moser X MBNF collab press conference, I had a quick meet with Guy Bove, our dear friend. I can't say too much because it's also on embargo, but he's working on something spectacular. So stay tuned for that. So how was the press conference, Rob?
Well, it was a very laid-back affair, actually. I was expecting a bit more pomp and ceremony, but as it happened, it was really just an opportunity to get a good up-close and personal look at the Moser and MBNF minute repeater, which has a tiny little panda DJ on the dial, and it's extremely cute. I mean, what's to say about it? It's a lovely mix. You know what's good about this watch? The thing that surprised me is how it looks so unremarkable. Now, that's a very strange compliment, I think, to pay a watch that is quite clearly a remarkable horological and aesthetic effort. But what I mean is, it just worked. You would think that having a miniaturized panda DJ, he's so cute. He's got his headphones sort of on. He's, like a DJ. He's holding one headphone against one ear and the other one's on the back of his head. And he's playing these two little turntables down right near the striking mechanism of the minute repeater, standing in front of an enormous balance wheel, which is the focal point of the watch, of course, set against a lustrous blue dial. What can we call it? It's not a turquoise. It's like a rich cerulean, I guess is how I'd describe it. It's absolutely divine. But it just fits. It just works. It looks like it's existed forever. It doesn't jar in any way. It doesn't feel like it's too much, which itself is a huge achievement for a watch that has a tiny panda DJ on the dial playing turntables on a hand-finished minute repeater. It shouldn't work. It does work. It looks like it was always part of the Streamliner collection. The legacy balance of MBNF is a perfect fit for the Streamliner case, and it is incredibly good fun. A wonderful partnership which looks to be strengthening year on year, and I can't say enough about it. What do you think about it, Alan?
So much fun. So cool. Fun is something you would expect from MBNF, working with another fun company, Moser. And actually, you can't expect it from anybody else. It's done elegantly. It's contemporary. It's horlogerie, but it's understated luxury. Well done. And whomever is going to bid on that, bid extra because they deserve it. And definitely the foundation that will get the funds deserves it. So kudos to you, gents.
It's stupid how unstupid that watch is, despite it being such a good-humored design. I think it's just a testament to the characterful niche that both MBNF and Moser have managed to carve for extremely high-end brands, and it is a great salve to the seriousness of the world in general, I think, and it's what we want our top-level brands to be doing more of. Right, moving on, we went to Hotel d'Angleterre, right, just down the road from Beau Rivage, and we had 3 meetings in quick succession. I was only a part of the first one with Crayon, and then you saw Louis Erard and Messina Lab on your own, while I hopped off to find Singer underground in the Fairmont. So let's just talk about Crayon. We didn't see anything new this time around. We saw, or I saw at least, everything that there was on offer back in March, but this was the first time you'd had those pieces in your hand, right? And I think you went through a similar conversion that I experienced, having initially, and I hold my hands up for being wrong on this front, dismissed the brand of Crayon as a bit humdrum, and it is far from it. Alon, why don't you share with the audience your first-hand experiences of these watches for the first time?
So you're quite right. And I've only seen them from afar when he launched the brand. I've seen it in Europe a star. Then we saw it at the GPHG Awards. And I always loved it on an intellectual level. The vibe I got off paper, it was a bit of a Patek-ish watch, which is not good or bad, but maybe not innovative. But if you think about it, the caliber is very innovative and very cool, but it's very understated. It's low-key, although there's a lot of métier d'art in there. And then I saw the interview with Jean Arnaud, so the CEO of La Fabrique du Temps and Louis Vuitton watches. He bought one, and that made it more 3D because it was video and explained the story behind why he purchased one. And then I held the watch, and I fell in love. And him explaining why he came up with the caliber. So for me, out of reach, budget-wise, but if you can afford it, definitely give it a chance because it's very, very cool and beautiful. So going from haute horlogerie to, again, accessible luxury, because Louis Hérard, now with a new face, well, not that new, but with Manuel Emsch, who is a legend in the watchmaking industry, he shook up the brand a bit, gave it a clear-cut strategy and actually new DNA, where they say we want accessible luxury and accessible métier d'art. So they make a lot of series where they take one métier d'art, make it into a limited series at an affordable price. So love Manuel, love Louis Hérard, them together, you get magic. It's literally synergy. So I held the piece with the lapis lazuli, with the malachite, the marquetry. They came up with a cool collab together with the horophile. So amazing guy. Amar, he's also fantastic guy. Friends with Manuel. They came up with a cool trio of dials, which is one collab, one drop, one launch, circular effect on the dial, very cool numbers. I love it. And we've seen some things on the embargo, so it's better that you and I now shut up because we keep on slipping there. And then a natural segue, because William Massina from Massina Lab, who has done, I believe, already 2 collabs with Louis Hérard, was sitting one table further, had a meeting with him, with Sylvain Pinault. And mamma mia, what a watch that is. They made a piece that's spectacular. I'm a huge fan of Sylvain's. First time I've met him. So I was a bit starstruck because William, I know very well. Sylvain, first time I met him. Fun-loving guy, laughing, jolly. So that was super cool. Can't add much more. While you were still at Singer, I met up quickly with George Bamford. Always great fun. Also good vibes only. And I want to hear how Singer was, because then you already came back again to Hotel d'Angleterre and we met Konstantin Chaikin. But first, Singer, please.
I'm a bit jealous that you got to hang out with George and Sylvain. I never met Sylvain either, but I read a really nice article in Europa Star about him a few months back now, I think, and I've been really interested to meet him, so hopefully you can make an introduction at some point. So, Singer Reimagined, obviously our good friend Marco Borracino was there, showing off the new collection, the 1969 collection, which we have spoken about previously, and I've written about for Revolution in recent times, I think also for SJX. The 1969 collection is a 2-watch series inspired by the seminal year of 1969, which was a very important one in watchmaking. It was the year that the automatic chronograph mechanism was finally realized, not once, not twice, but actually thrice in very quick succession by a series of competing brands who were trying to be the first one to master that craft. There's always a little bit of contention as to who actually won, so we won't get into that at this point, but we will just referenced that year as a very special year for watchmaking. Of course, there was also the moon landings, which Omega has been dining out on ever since. So it was a year like no other in the horological history books, and Singer is paying homage to that with these two mechanisms, the 1969 chronograph and the 1969 timer. They use the flyback mechanisms we've seen before, made by Agenor for Singer, but they display the information in a different manner. And I don't know which one you prefer. I kind of like the chronograph in theory, but the timer is really neat and really clean and sits really well on the wrist. And that bracelet, which Marco talked about our interview with him, has been deliberately designed to be removable, so people can put whatever strap or bracelet they want on these watch heads, so they can really personalize it and wear it as they see fit, which is the opposite tack taken by a lot of other modern sports watch designers. So I'd be interested to hear what you think about that momentarily, but just to touch upon the other major piece that was present at the Singer booth, and that was the Track 1 Endurance, the official watch partner for the Hertz Team Jota in the World Endurance Championship. This is a stunning watch, and I think maybe my favorite Singer of all time. I'll tell you what's really important about the design here, and it's the color of red, the specific shade of red used on the dial for the units per hour chapter ring and for the 24-hour counter in the middle of the dial. It's not really obvious from the press images, even on the website, in every shot, exactly how bright and how vivid this red is. It leaps off the wrist and is an incredible contrast with the old gold of Singer's logo, of the minute track, and of the case itself in this case, and the grey and the black and the more, it's not stark white, almost like, I don't know what you call it, ice grey rings around the outside. It's extremely harmonious. It is apparently something that took the brand ages and ages and ages to get right, because they wanted to use their signature orange and find a red that really played with that orange in a positive manner, and they did succeed it. But I really recommend you get out there, find one of these watches in a boutique or on the wrist of a Singer collector and have a good look at it, because it is something else to witness in real life. Okay, so back to KC at the Hotel d'Angleterre. It was a pretty short meeting. There wasn't too many words exchanged between us and Constantine, because the watchers do all the talking for themselves. The cutest, perhaps most heartwarming moment of the entire affair occurred during this meeting, when you video called your kids with the Minion watch in hand and showed it to them both. So maybe tell us a little bit about that.
So Chaikin was somebody I've been meaning to meet quite some time. Also been admiring from afar, because what people know him for today is maybe the Joker and the crazy pieces, but he's a very, very good watchmaker. And he even has made a perpetual calendar with a Hebrew calendar, for example. And he makes crazy, complicated mechanical marvels. Now, we came to the meeting. Indeed, not many words exchanged, because his English is not that good. His Hebrew is not that good. My Russian stops at Harasho. So, and we didn't have translators there. So we let the watches speak. And oh my gosh, how much do his watches speak, don't they? He put two in front of us. Bright, yellow, fun, eyes looking at you. Who doesn't love Minions? One of them was a Minion limited edition, which apparently sold out within 12 hours. And I believe a retail price of something around 17,500. I don't remember correctly. But so much fun. So my kids, 6 and 3 at the time, in love with Minions. I had to FaceTime them. So we called them, and I believe you also recorded it. So we uploaded that to an Instagram reel and a TikTok, which was, by the way, the most watched and liked video from the fair, where I'm showing the watch and you're doing.
I forgot.
So we actually had sound effects by the infamous. That actually does, yeah. So it actually has like Minion sound effects, and it still racks up likes and views on Instagram. So it was rather brief, great fun. I forgot the name. Apparently there is a Russian equivalent to an historical cartoon, Russian cartoon. So there were two versions. super cool. I love what he does. He doesn't take himself too serious, although he's a genius. And that's how it should be. Going from Chaikin, we went to another amazing Russian brand, Raketa, who, funnily, is owned by an Englishman, David Henderson Stewart, whom I've known already for almost 3.5 years. But we got introduced by Frank Gelen. So shout out to Frank from Monochrome Watches. He's a good friend of mine. And he met David a few years ago. And David was looking for retailers. So Frank connected us. David and I have been in contact ever since. He did a virtual meetup for Red Bar Crew Amsterdam. And obviously with all the mess of COVID and now what's happening in that region, things are not easy for him, but he's a true entrepreneur. He is creative. He managed to come, exhibit there. So we are going to see how we can work together and help him out in these difficult times, because he has an amazing crew of artisans, watchmakers in St. Petersburg, working very hard on very cool watches. And one of them is a watch that literally goes counterclockwise. And his explanation is that due to obviously a sundial, we learned to read time counterclockwise. But at a certain point, watchmakers decided to make a movement run clockwise. So more to come. He agreed to come onto the show. So we'll interview David in length about how an Englishman came to own a Russian manufacturer, because all the calibers are made in-house. And a little insider's tip, Manuel Emsch is also helping him. So that room had a lot of Manuel Emsch flavor to it in Hotel d'Angleterre.
I have no idea what that's supposed to taste like, but yeah, it's a good dish. It's some good ingredients in that dish, that's for sure. And David's a really fascinating guy. I love him explaining how the way that we tell time is wrong, because he's so strong on that fact, and he regards it as a fact. And I remember sort of listening to him explain the reasoning behind the watch that runs, well, backwards as far as the majority of people are concerned. And I had this, I would just love the theatre of it. I'm not sure I entirely agree with him, but I like the way of thinking, let's say that. So I look forward to having David on the show again. I did interview him once years ago for Fratello, and it was a really interesting chat because his backstory is very unusual. And you're right, to have an Englishman, a very Englishman really, running such an historic Russian company is bizarre, but great as well. And it is a terrible shame. Of course, there are much worse things happening than businesses suffering due to the conflicts in Ukraine. But yeah, he's a nice bloke, and the business and the history of that company shouldn't suffer as a result, I guess. So let's get him on the show and let's see what he has to say for himself. Right, moving on. We split up again. God, it was a bit of a disjointed day, wasn't it? You went to Grubel Force and I went to Renaissance, and you joined there also after you'd been to Grubel Force. Tell us about Grubel, because you were absolutely blown away by this, weren't you?
I've always been blown away by Grubel Force. I remember vividly the first time they've ever exhibited at Basel. And they had a little booth next to AHCI, so the Independence, and I was with my dad, and that was the first time we discovered the brand, and we literally were glued with our nose to the showcases, and I've been in love ever since. And they always stayed spectacular and amazing, and for me, they reached stardom, Hall of Fame level with their Aeon project, with the handmade one, I believe it was called, or you know what I mean, right? That watch that was completely made by one person and cost over $1 million. And that made them I don't even know what the superlative is of infamous, famous, legendary. There is nothing higher. And at a certain point, they sold only 20% to Richemont because I believe Rupert was in love with the brand and he basically begged them to buy a share. They've always kept their independent spirit. And I believe last year or even this year, they bought back that 20% share and they're 100% independent again. The founders now are taking it a bit slower. The current CEO was busy, so Calles, but he promised to come on the show as well. I had an amazing meeting with Michel Neidegger. Lovely guy, very passionate, very elegant, took his time, let me absorb the novelties, and he's head of marketing and communication, but usually, I'm sorry to say, not all of them are that knowledgeable or passionate about the products they actually represent and sell. But he was very much so, and he gave me a lovely presentation. They only launched 2x2 watches, totally blacked out. But my gosh, I don't even remember the name. I don't remember prices. I just know that I'm super in love, and the day I win a lottery, not the lottery, but one of many, I'm buying a Gros Falsi. I don't know what to tell more, Rob. It's mind-boggling.
And we're also in love with restaurants, of course, and Benoit, and we went along to that meeting in the Fairmont, and we had a lovely, relaxed chat and talked about a couple of projects that we have on the go together, and I'm looking forward to getting him on air, to be honest. I mean, the release this year was just a simple color update, but it's a beautiful color. It's a sage green model, which takes the Renaissance aesthetic and just puts it in a different light. I liked it very much. We'll talk to him soon and get him on air for a full-length episode. The man we got to speak to most extensively at the fair was Jean-Christophe Sabatier, whose episode went live a week and a half ago, episode 101, I believe. And that was an absolute treat. It was a joy to sit down with Jean-Christophe again. We've known each other for a few years now, and I just have the utmost respect for him. And I just love the guy. He's so nice and open and inviting and passionate about the brand of Ulysse Nardin. And that is a company I would love, love, love to work with it more extensively in any way they see fit, because I feel like it's still a bit misunderstood, that brand. It's a lot of things at once. I think, like I was saying, Frederic Constant has this ability to play ball in different price brackets. Ulysse Nardin is different in that it's almost like two iterations of the same brand operating simultaneously, because it has this incredible heritage. I think it was 1846 it was founded. That rings a bell. I might be wrong. Maybe you can Google that while I'm prattling on and just see if I'm right. They've been around for ages. Absolutely ages, and they have an incredible track record with marine chronometry, which is still expressed in some of the collections that exist today. But at the same time, they are perhaps one of the greatest modern innovators. When you think about the freak and the employment of silicon in watchmaking, that was Ulysse Nardin. And when I was getting into watchmaking in the early 2000s, that was the story. They were the big dogs. They were the experimenters. Mr. Schneider, the late Mr. Schneider, pushed this company into a stratosphere that very few brands had even approached at that time. And now, I believe you aligned them with the space age heavyweights like MB&F and Urwerk and so on and so forth. But in many ways, Ulysse was there first and doing things that still are crazily experimental 20 years after the fact. I mean, the Freak collection now is a modern icon, and it's enough to build an entire brand around alone. And having that as the continuation of a legacy that stretches back 150 years plus is absolutely phenomenal. So I wasn't going to talk for very long about Ulysse Nardin because we had the whole episode with Jean-Christophe, but I mean, That's my takeaway. That's my feeling. This is why, as you always say, these face-to-face meetings are so important, getting to see the watches in person, handle them. You tried a few on your wrist while I was recording, and they look great. They're absolutely mind-blowingly complicated aesthetically and technically. But man, it makes you love the brand so much. It makes you want to wear one of those watches just to continue its legacy. Did you feel the same?
I do. And I'm not objective because I've been wearing a Freak X for quite some time. And I don't need to Google because you're right, it's 1846. And I don't know why I remember all these irrelevant, stupid years, but you are right, founded in Le Locle. And I'm not objective because I've been admiring Ulysse Nardin for quite some time. I did put them up there. They weren't completely the first, but technologically they did because they were the first ever to use silicon in movements. I believe it was in the year 2000 with the Freak. That was the first Freak ever. And and they're pushing that space age theme rightfully so, and they do deserve to be up there. And for all of you that think that a Freak is out of reach, today they have the S and the X. The X is, I believe, with all the inflation, it went up from around 20-ish to 25,000. But if you think about it, it's amazing value for money because it's a carousel movement. But we will have Patrick Prunier on the show as well. So maybe we'll save that for that episode, Rob, and move on to our fun evening with Fears.
Yeah, I mean, we alluded to it before, but Nicholas very kindly took us out for dinner at one of his favorite brasseries in the center of Geneva. It was lovely. We met with other journalists. Ricky from Scottish Watches was there with his lovely fiance, and we met with Blake from Worn and Wound, Gabe and Asher from Collective Horology, who of course retail Fears, and also Arcanauts. So Gabe, Asher, and I work together frequently as it is. And gosh, who else came and went during the evening? We had we had guys from Fears, of course, which was very nice. Lee was a real treat to get to know.
Very well, because Lee was the surprise of the evening for me. And this is a shout out to Lee, because he's an amazing watch designer and designer in general. So I've asked him to come on the show as well. You guys gave me too much beer, so I don't remember everything completely, but we had another Collective Horology Titan ex Meta Group, and I forgot his name because I already had too many beers and he arrived rather late. But it was a fun evening. It was so much fun. We missed out on the GMT party.
Yeah, that was crazy.
We had our own little party going on.
Well, yeah, it's just too much fun.
Yeah, it was too much fun. So thank you so much, Nicholas and Lee, for hosting us. And it was laid back, and actually almost everyone from that party we've asked to come on the show as well. I definitely want the Collective boys on the show because it's an innovative retail concept, which is very cool. Besides that, they're awesome guys. It's very interesting to hear their story and journey into the watchmaking world.
Yeah, I've got an idea of having them on separately, which is maybe somewhat strange, but I've interviewed them as a duo before when I was at Fratello, and I thought, you know what I'd really like to do? I'd really like to dig into each individual's backstory and isolate them from one another, see where they cross over, where they don't. Because I mean, they're both great characters, and I think that they have a lot to say about the movie that should be listened to. So yeah,
I think it's a good idea. Let's do that. And I guess I know the feeling because I guess that a lot of people feel the same about you and me, that they want to separate us.
Yeah, keep trying. All right, next up is Artia. So this was the following morning. We met with Ivan Arpa and his team, and we were really impressed by some of the stuff at Artia. Right?
What a joy that was. I mean, if the coffee didn't kick in from our breakfast, which we didn't have because we were rushing, I mean, wow. I've always admired Arpa, Mr. Arpa, from afar. And he's good friends with my good friend, Keith Strandberg. They're both martial arts heroes, black belt holders, and very active independent minds, and what a mind-blowing collection. My favorite, and it even reached the top 10 of Geneva Watch Days, was the watermelon version of a full sapphire two-tone transparent case. Wow, I'm still thinking about it.
Yeah, it's impressive, isn't it? So what we've got here is nano sapphire, right, that is either extremely brightly colored or sapphire that changes color in sunlight. So they had a nice little display where they had a UV light that the watch was passed directly under, and it would go from like purple to green or from yellow to pink. And it was incredible to see. Interesting technology. These are cases we're talking about, not just dials, which I think might be a more conservative application that other brands might be interested in exploring. I certainly would like to explore that myself. I think I will talk to Ivan about maybe the possibility of using Artia as a third-party supplier to create nano sapphire color change dials, because that could be something that we could use for other brands. Really surprising stuff. But the watch that really stole my heart, I don't really know how to say this. It was the pink, bezeled, clear sapphire cased, aventurine dialed diver on the Barbie pink rubber strap. And
it was sick.
It was so cool. It was so great. And it actually suited me.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, that's a naughty little watch. But at 40K or thereabouts, it's around there. When you get up to that point, you don't need to be too precise with the pricing. It's a lot of money for what would be a pretty novelty watch in my collection, but great stuff, lovely movement.
So much creativity. And I mean, we can't express this verbally. My advice, go Google or go to a browser, type in rtya.com, Artia. You'll get ready for some visual explosions. The watch that we initially were talking about is the Tiny Purity Tourbillon Nano Sapphire Chameleon. It's nominated for GPHG 2023 as well. We've also discussed already on air the Purity Moissanite for Only Watch. They make crazy stuff. There are some pictures also up on our LinkedIn page and on our Insta. You have indeed a full sapphire diver, never seen that before. But we also discussed one of my favorites from GPHG 2022, which was that diver with the rainbow indicator that lights up the deeper you dive. So I was very, very happy to be in that meeting. And big surprise was that Ivan himself popped in. We also hung out with him a bit, laughed, joked around. He's as cool as you would think he is in real life.
Yeah, he's a rock star. Absolutely. And talking of rock stars of the industry or rock stars in the rock star world, Jacob & Co. was next on the list, and we didn't spend a huge amount of time there. We had a sort of group presentation, and we checked out I like the new Bugatti one, and I think it's actually, no, you know what? It's not ceramic, is it? It was painted ceramic, then fired over and over, hand painted onto like I guess a steel or white gold base. But this was a very unusual technique that I'd not encountered before. It looks like a ceramic case, but actually it's more like vitreous enamel kind of in its application, where an artisan paints layers of this stuff onto the case and then fires it repeatedly to get this, almost porcelain-esque appearance. And that was rather exciting. But beyond that, I didn't see a huge amount from Jacob & Co. that I was really, really keen on. I think you liked the GMT model though, right?
It came out with so much craziness at Watches and Wonders. At a certain point, I think they actually can keep up that pace, but I don't think the world can. So it was actually a nice, fresh breath of air where they launched only one model, which was a tribute to the journey of the Arabov family from Bukhara to Israel to the States. And they took a piece that I believe grandfather had with 2 time zones on it, so 2 individual dials in one watch, and they made a tribute watch to that. So it spoke to me, obviously, by the shared roots, but also because it was rather classical, definitely for Jacob & Co.'s standards. So I think it was a nice move because it shows the multifaceted brand that it is. So nice and smooth, especially after the mind-boggling meeting at Watches and Wonders. And that's a nice segue to a rather classical brand. We had to rush across the bridge back to the Fairmount Hotel to see Arnold and Son together with Angelus, which was great fun. We sat outside again on a nice patio, balcony, and nice relaxed meeting, but not so relaxed for me because I really fell in love. And unfortunately, one of them is under embargo, but I'm scared I've ordered an Angelus, Rob. Did I?
I think you might have done, yeah. I think you certainly made your intentions clear. So yeah, I would probably be checking your bank balance to make sure you've got enough money in there when it finally drops, because I believe the piece that you want is embargoed, so we can't talk too much about it. But I am in love with these modern Angelus chronographs. I think they're absolutely gorgeous, and I think I would like to own one. They're wearable. They have a beautiful action on the pushers, as Mike Stockton would say, and they just are a great continuation of a esteemed chronograph legacy for that brand. Moving on, we had a meeting with Corum in Maison de Horloge, in a retailer in the center of town, where we also met with Charles Zuber. That was interesting. We saw the bubble watches. We saw some crazy stuff, reimagining of the Admiral collection, but I don't think that is something that I would crow about too much. I think that it has a niche market, but I'm not it. What do you think about Corum these days?
For me, it was a nice reunion with my old-time friend Boone Chong-sun, who, as a hardcore passionado watch collector, moved up the ranks as a journalist, always loved Corum, got into Corum, moved to Switzerland, and I believe he's today vice president. I don't remember correctly. I stand corrected if I use the wrong title, but he's management team right now. So it was lovely to see him. Corum is in transition, and he's leading that transition. It needs time, but they have a long-term vision. They showed us an amazing concept watch. They are still a bit of soul searching. I don't think they've found it their stride. They didn't find their stride yet. If I'm saying the saying correctly, Rob, correct me if I'm wrong. There's still a way to go, and we wish them the best of luck. But we did invite Boone to come on the show, so stay tuned for that. Going from an old titan to another old but very contemporary titan, Gérard Perregaux, at the Woodward Hotel. Very lovely meeting with Leopoldo. Rob, what did you think of that meeting?
Well, to be quite frank, it was one of the highlights of the week for me. I was thoroughly impressed with the direction that GP's taking. I was incredibly taken by the connection that we had with the brand, and I never would have seen this really coming. But I think there's a fruitful relationship there for the Real-Time Show and for GP with some of the stuff they're doing. The watches they're making are absolutely excellent, and it's a brand with a great heritage, and there's a lot of love for it in the community.
And I want to give a shout out to both Leopoldo, because together with Gerber Folsi, Leopoldo was the second that, although he's on the PR marketing side of things, truly knowledgeable and passionate about watches. So it was refreshing and actually lovely, because that made the presentation double as awesome. And a shout out to the Sowine Group, because the only thing they shared besides financing is the CEO. So Patrick Pugnot is CEO of both Ulysse Nardin and Gérard Perregaux. But then it's literally vertically split. People think that it's a show, but it isn't. They don't share the same people, not the same watchmakers, and they have their own strategy. And that is also proven by the fact that Gérard Perregaux was at the Woodward Hotel and Ulysse Nardin was at their own boutique in Geneva. And at Watches and Wonders, they were also split. So that's very interesting to see that they are both taking their own direction at things. GP had 1 or 2 novelties, I believe. They took it easy, long-term strategy. He explained a bit what direction they're taking, which was kind of embargoed. So I'll shut up now and go to our last meeting, and then we'll round up the show because, as usual, we're chatting too much. So, Rob, what did you think of our dear bear? You loved the Oris bear, didn't you?
I hate the Oris bear. You know this. Love Oris, hate the bear. So if anyone doesn't know, like, Oris has a bear as a mascot, which is super cute. But me and the bear, we don't get on. We are rivals for the affection of the female population of Geneva as two short, hairy, slightly rotund, watch-loving males. We are obviously at loggerheads in competition. And I don't like the way he looks at me. He's always got that self-satisfied smirk on his face. And once again, we had a selfie with the bear, much to my disgruntlement. And you can see my disdain for the chap in my eyes. But the watches themselves are good. And we enjoyed our meeting with Oris, with Sonia. It was very good. The new diver is an absolute weapon. It's as thick, and I mentioned this to her in the meeting. She didn't quite know what to do with the statement. It wasn't a question. Just pointed out that it is as thick as some watches are wide. It's around 26 mil thick, is it? Or something stupid like that. Like, it's enormous. And if it weren't for the fact that it looked like it could survive a nuclear bomb or being dropped from space all the way to the bottom of the Mariana Trench, then it might be unforgivably preposterous, but it isn't, because it's absolutely awesome, and it is a unit. Yeah, if you've not seen it in real life, go check it out at an Oris retailer. There'll be a bunch of these on the high street. It may not be the watch for you because it is so incredibly top heavy, but it might turn you onto the brand, and it might point you in the direction of another piece in the collection. As I mentioned in the previous part 1 of this Geneva Watch Days review, the Bulgari Octofinissimo Carbon Gold had that effect on me and led me towards the black ceramic, which is a model I hadn't considered before. So this Oris submarine could charm you, I believe. What do you think about that, Alon?
Their novelties at this fair shows exactly what Oris is. They have extreme duality and capabilities. So that watch you're referring to is a behemoth. It's a ultimate tool watch. Its form follows function, has nothing to do with beauty. And then they launched a watch that's super elegant, slim, less is more. It's almost design. Great price point. I believe it was $1,750 or even less. Retail, dress watch, slim. And it shows the wide array of capabilities and design code within Oris. I used to love their old slogan, real watches for real people. It's basically no BS, and it's all about the product's quality, and that's why I love Oris. And I think we should wrap it up here. So, Rob, take it away.
Yes, thank you very much for listening. And if you did enjoy this episode and you'd like to be part of a future episode, if you have any questions about any of the brands or models that we spoke about, then please do get in touch with us directly. You can do so on Instagram. I'm there at RobNuds, ROBNUDDS. Alon can be found at ALONBENJOSEPH. Or you can get in touch with us both via our emails, either Rob or Alon realtime.show, or you can contact us via our contact form on the website www.therealtime.show. If you would like to join the Real Time Show network, our WhatsApp community, you can do so by simply requesting the sign-up link via any of the aforementioned channels. If you don't mind, please like, follow, subscribe, and share the podcast. It'll help us grow. It'll help us bring more and more interesting people onto the airwaves, and it'll help us work with brands as we move forward and look to grow the Real Time Show. Until next time, stay safe and keep on ticking.